So this is what a tool set a DevOps engineer would actually use. Okay, so let's start here with your version control. Your bread and butter would be Git. Definitely Git, because it's the one that actually keeps track of your code and keeps tracks of your commits and all the changes that are, and you can tell it what to track and what not to track. Right? And then after Git has actually consolidated everything that you're tracking and that you're ready to push to a specific repository, you have two options roughly. You have online, where you're dealing with GitHub. GitHub is pretty much your Google Drive for your code for everyone, right? Or you could host it on GitLab or Bitbucket. Difference is GitHub is online, it's in a cloud server in a different company. So sometimes certain companies have very high governance, and that becomes a problem. So therefore they will tell you, don't want our code sitting in the cloud. But they might find that they have their own servers. What the nice part about GitLab and most likely Bitbucket, you can actually host it locally. So you can host these things within your servers within your server to make sure that the code remains within the company's premises and does not stay within the cloud. Right? Let's move on to CI/CD tools, which is CI is constant integration, and then CD is constant development. Okay, so constant integration and constant development tools, not constant, continuous. Sorry, continuous integration and continuous development tools, but same WhatsApp group. So you got Jenkins. Jenkins just builds up your pipelines. Essentially, all of these, right? What are pipelines? Your pipelines are your transport layer that moves your code from your local environment to your staging environment, and then moves it to your production environment. So in between there, you can add certain functions like, or certain actions like testing your code, injecting your secrets, which is your API keys and things like that, into a vault or anything like that. So you've got Jenkins, you've got GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions belongs to GitHub. Jenkins, it's on its own. Very sought after, especially if you're doing DevOps. They want that a lot. GitLab is pretty much GitLab. So GitLab has its own CI/CD tools. So you could just use that comprehensively. But most likely, if you're using Git, maybe using Gitia or Bitbucket, right? Git with Bitbucket paired with Jenkins works. There's Azure DevOps as well. Azure DevOps is perfect if you're in a .NET environment, right? Then we've got container tools. So if you're containerizing your application, you are going to need this. You're going to need Docker. Well, with Docker is the small component, but now when those small components become a lot, and now you have to start to orchestrate them and manage them, you are going to need Kubernetes, and that is what actually, orchestrates everything, to orchestrates all the Docker containers that are within your environment, right? Then down to this guy, which is infrastructure as code. We have Terraform, we have Ansible, we have Chef and Puppet. Terraform essentially is just, it allows you to, deploy specific infrastructure as code, right? In terms of, like, you can create your VMs, you can create a certain uh, fixed structure. It's more like just it's more like somewhat of a script, if you could say, that allows you to build whenever on demand, essentially. Ansible allows you to configure your VMs and configure your VMs with a very specific way, but essentially infrastructure as code, you could just take it as scripting in a sense. So then you have your cloud platform. So if you know infrastructure as code, you can actually work agnostically in any of these guys, which is AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. As long as you know these guys, these ones are the source. If you know these ones are a must. These three are a must. But these ones, you need to know these, because these ones, you get good at these, you can work anyway. And then you got your monitoring tools. You got Grafana, you got Negios, and you got Prometheus, if I'm not mistaken. These ones are just your monitoring tools. Though these can monitor if your instances are running okay, if there's any failures, and pretty much just checks if your infrastructure as code is actually working once it's actually deployed and your VMs are running and your environment is actually set up from these guys. So this one just shows you the statistics of it.